Good morning. Today's headlines: a packed September ahead in Congress with can't-miss deadlines on funding and an anticipated impeachment inquiry vote. We look at the impacts of a possible government shutdown.
A transcript in former President Trump's Georgia case released. It shows pro-Trump electors were trying to imitate what Hawaii Democrats did in 1960 in the Nixon-JFK challenge. We speak to a legal analyst about any differences.
The U.S. says North Korea's leader expects to meet with President Putin in Russia to advance arms negotiations. We have the details.
Ukraine is calling for the Black Sea grain deal to be restored. Russian President Vladimir Putin says that's on the table, but there's a catch.
And $1.3 million to retire. That's what many Americans estimate they'll need. But does it apply to you? We hear from an expert.
Good morning. Welcome to NTD. I'm Kevin Hogan.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Evelyn Lee. Today is Tuesday, September 5th.
Yes, and Evelyn, you know what's ironic about the meeting between Putin and Kim Jong-un is that Russia had backed UN sanctions against North Korea's nuclear ambitions for years.
Right, and in exchange for weapons, North Korea would get money to develop its intercontinental ballistic missiles.
Yes, and that's so it can be considered a legit nuclear state and get concessions from the U.S.
Well, right, but heading into our top news today, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton will face an impeachment trial. He's only the third official in Texas history to be impeached. NTD's legal correspondent Arlene Richards reviews how he got there.
Paxton, only the third official in Texas history to face impeachment, has denied rumors that he will resign before the trial. The trial comes after a Republican-led House in May overwhelmingly voted to adopt 20 articles of impeachment presented by a committee.
The chair moves that the committee adopt the articles of impeachment against Warren Kenneth Paxton, Attorney General of the state of Texas.
The committee's report included accusations of bribery, retaliation against whistleblowers, and obstruction of justice. For example, whistleblowers from his own staff reported Paxton to the FBI for suspected corruption in 2020 over his alleged dealings with a donor and real estate investor. The whistleblowers, who had been fired or resigned, sued, and Paxton struck a $3.3 million settlement. Paxton has denied any wrongdoing and has called the impeachment a sham. Texas GOP Chairman Matt Rinaldi told Steve Bannon's War Room that Paxton is being targeted.
The Texas House is one of the only, I think it's the only legislative body in the United States where the majority party, Republicans here, voluntarily share leadership with Democrats. When they bring Democrats in on leadership, they make deals. They have tremendous influence over what happens. And one of the things that they demanded was taking down our Republican Attorney General.
Rinaldi said Democrats blamed Paxton for the January 6 Capitol breach because he was filing lawsuits challenging the 2020 election results. Democrat State Representative James Tallarico voted for the impeachment. After the vote in May, he said this about Paxton.
And I hope folks recognize that corrupt public officials like Ken Paxton are the rot at the core of our broken political system, and holding them accountable is our job as elected officials.
In a separate matter, several attorneys filed a complaint against Paxton accusing him of violations of professional conduct rules in connection with Paxton's election lawsuit against Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, and Wisconsin. If the complaint is successful, Paxton could be suspended from the practice of law or be permanently disbarred.
The impeachment trial starts at 9 a.m. Central Time today.
Lawmakers are back in D.C. this week after a month-long recess. Senators come back today at 3 p.m. and the House is back next week.
Lawmakers heading into a packed September schedule with consequential deadlines and brewing political drama over an impeachment inquiry into President Biden. And today's Melina Weisskopf has more on what to expect.
There are serious disagreements right now about how to fund the government to avoid a government shutdown before the end of the month. The Senate Appropriations Committee has already passed their government funding bills at much higher spending levels than some House Republicans are willing to accept. And adding to this issue is the fact that the White House has requested $40 billion in emergency aid for natural disaster relief, border management, and Ukraine aid, which will also be difficult for some House Republicans to swallow. And some Republicans are already drawing a red line in the sand. Congressman Chip Roy, as well as 14 others, are saying that they're going to oppose any spending bill that funds the Department of Homeland Security without making changes to border policy. Meanwhile, Speaker Kevin McCarthy says that if he cannot get a consensus within the Republican Party as well as a consensus with the Democrats, he could push a continuing resolution that is a short-term government funding bill to avoid a shutdown by the end of this month, trying to make the case sort of with his Republican colleagues that if the government does shut down and they do choose to risk this, it could also pause their investigations, including those probes into the Biden family, which right now are on the verge of becoming an impeachment inquiry. Speaker Kevin McCarthy has described taking this step towards impeachment inquiry as natural. Meanwhile, Chairman of the Judiciary Jim Jordan says that he feels that the House is inclined to have this vote at some point during this month.
And we'll bring you the impact of a possible government shutdown with NTD Business host Don Ma in a moment.
Former Trump aide Peter Navarro is heading to trial for contempt of Congress today. That's over his defiance of the January 6th committee after ignoring its subpoena for documents and testimony.
Navarro faces 2 charges of contempt with a fine of up to $100,000 and a year in prison for each count if convicted.
Navarro pleaded not guilty and has dismissed the subpoena as illegal and unenforceable. He says he was protected by executive privilege, a claim rejected by the judge in the case last week.
The judge refused to dismiss the case after concluding Navarro failed to produce evidence of Trump's authorization to ignore the subpoena. Prosecutors allege Navarro refused of his own will and argued that Trump and his lawyers have not confirmed if he received Trump's approval.
Navarro frames the case as a fundamental dispute between legislative and executive branches. He is the second former Trump aide to be prosecuted for criminal contempt of Congress. Steve Bannon was sentenced to 4 months in prison after being convicted last year.
A transcript has been released in Trump's Georgia case. It shows the alternate pro-Trump electors in Georgia were trying to emulate the challenge to Hawaii's presidential election in 1960. There, both parties made the decision to send their slate of electors to Congress amid uncertainty about the results. We're going to delve into the legal specifics surrounding how this is going to affect the case. Paul Kamenar, the lead counsel of the National Legal and Policy Center, joins us live. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
These alternate electors are charged with impersonating public officers, saying that they weren't contingent electors. So can you explain the difference between a contingent elector and a fake elector?
Yeah, sure. Actually, all of the electors, both the Democrat and Republican side, are contingent until they're certified and counted by the vice president on January 6th. What happened here was that the contingent electors, and by the way, the mainstream media keeps calling them fake electors. There's nothing fake about it. What happened was there was a lawsuit filed by the Trump campaign challenging the results of the Georgia election. And that lawsuit was still pending. And in order to protect their right to have the electors counted, if they won the lawsuit, they had to meet on December 19th at the Georgia Capitol and cast their votes. And so they're contingent in the sense that if they won the case, then those votes would have been counted by the vice president on January 6th. So there was nothing illegal about that. And as was mentioned, this was done exactly the same way as was done in Hawaii. When President Kennedy.
Yeah, so in Hawaii, there was a vote difference of about 100 votes, and then it ended up swinging the other way after a recount for JFK. But a law professor at Georgia State University says that this whole argument is nonsensical because there's just a legitimate debate about what happened in Hawaii, whereas in Georgia that was not. I mean, the vote difference was 100,000. There were several recounts. Biden was still at the top. What do you have to say about this?
Yeah, there's no legal distinction between the vote that happened in Hawaii and here. There may be a vote count difference, but the main thing is that there was a case pending in court, number one. Number two, a law professor, Todd Zawicki of George Mason, submitted a 19-page declaration saying how what happened in Georgia was exactly the same way it happened in Hawaii. And that was presented to Fannie Willis in July 19th to show that this was being done with the precedent and it was in good faith. There was no criminal intent to be done, and that was evidenced by the transcript that was recently released. Again, this is perfectly legitimate, and I think that this case will be dismissed, at least with respect to the contingent electors in Georgia.
Very interesting. And touching on DA Willis, does she have to show that the alternate electors' actions were illegal, or is it enough to show that this was a broader illegal scheme, even if their actions were illegal?
She's going to have to show actually both, because she's alleging that this was a particular crime that they were basically disguising themselves as officials, and they're not. And again, this is a RICO conspiracy count she's making, so that has to be tied in to the whole case that she's making. But I think she's going to lose that because she has to prove criminal intent. Something may be illegal, but if you don't have criminal intent to violate the law, then you cannot be convicted for that.
And how would she prove criminal intent in this case?
Well, it's going to be hard. She's going to have to get evidence that these electors knew that what they were doing was illegal, that they knew that there was no chance that the lawsuit would work in their favor. And the vote count was not just a matter of the votes that were cast. There's also questions of whether the votes some of them were legal in terms of the process that was used in terms of the mail-in ballots and so forth and so on. So it's just not a matter of a recount, but there are certain questions about the legality of some of the procedures that were used not only in Georgia, but in other states as well.
Well, Paul Kamenar, lead counsel of the National Legal and Policy Center, thanks for helping us understand the specifics here.
Thank you. My pleasure.
First Lady Jill Biden has tested positive for COVID-19. The White House disclosed the news last night. President Biden has tested negative. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said the president will continue testing at regular intervals this week. As for the First Lady, a spokeswoman says she's experiencing only mild symptoms and will remain at the First Family's home in Rehoboth Beach in Delaware. The president returned to the White House last night. He's due to travel to a Group of 20 summit in India on Thursday.
President Biden touted his accomplishments to union workers in Philadelphia yesterday and pushed back against critics who say he's too old for a second term. The 80-year-old 2024 candidate said the only thing that comes with age is a little bit of wisdom during his Labor Day speech. More than 70% of voters in a Wall Street Journal poll released yesterday said Biden is too old for a second term. Less than 50% said Trump was too old. 59% of voters disapprove of Biden's president's handling of the economy, and nearly 3 in 4 said inflation is heading in the wrong direction. Biden and Trump were tied in a potential rematch. Each had 46% of the vote. Trump's support among Republicans has only grown despite the multiple criminal indictments against him. Biden would be 86 before a second term ends. Trump, who was 77, would be 82 when he left office if he wins in 2024.
And coming up, New Jersey's governor appears to be changing his stance on illegal immigration. That's after the Biden administration proposed sending illegal immigrants to the Garden State.
And some are crying foul after the conviction of 5 pro-life activists who are now facing 11 years in prison. NTD has analyses from 2 attorneys after we get back.
Did you know dragging chains can spark a wildfire?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Imagine a coffee that cares for your health. Expertly fermented with a 50 enzyme complex to enhance flavor and remove bitterness. Small batch roasted to a decadent medium dark, resulting in a brew that is gentle on digestion, low acid, and up to 90% less caffeine than regular coffee. Try America's first enzyme fermented coffee today.
It's all good, baby.
Is it really all good?
If you love me enough to routinely test your handyman skills, not to mention the strength of your marriage, then of course you'll visit nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat to make sure I'm in the right car seat.
Good to have you back. Chinese nationals, sometimes posing as tourists, have reportedly accessed military bases and other sensitive sites in the U.S. up to 100 times in recent years. They've been dubbed gate crashers because of their attempts to enter without authorization. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on what officials call potential espionage threats.
The Wall Street Journal, citing anonymous U.S. officials, reported that the FBI, Defense Department, and other agencies held a review last year to try to limit the incidents. Gatecrashers ranged from Chinese nationals found crossing into a U.S. missile range in New Mexico to scuba divers swimming in murky waters near a U.S. government rocket launch site in Florida in the close to 100 incidents tracked. Officials say the tactics appear to be aimed at testing security protocols at U.S. military installations and other federal locations. The incidents that occur in rural areas with little tourism typically involved Chinese nationals who officials say are pressed into service and required to report back to the Chinese regime. Concerns over CCP espionage are high after a Chinese spy balloon crossed the U.S. before being shot down earlier this year. Representative Jason Crow, a member of the House Intelligence Committee, says Congress is considering legislation on the issue. That's over fears the growing number of gatecrashers could go unnoticed or be understated, as most trespassing laws are at state and local levels, not federal. Officials familiar with the incident say many of the trespassers are only detained briefly, then escorted out of the U.S. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
New Jersey's governor appears to be changing his stance on illegal immigration after previously advocating for sanctuary policies. This is after the Biden administration proposed sending illegal immigrants to the Garden State. Here's the story.
The Biden administration recently proposed that some of the 60,000 illegal immigrants in New York City could be moved to the Atlantic City International Airport in New Jersey. The decision triggered a sharp reaction from New Jersey politicians. Democratic Governor Phil Murphy responded to News 12 New Jersey.
I don't see any scenario, Eric, where we're going to be able to take in a program in Atlantic City or frankly elsewhere in the state. We are already seeing folks in New Jersey that have probably swelled into Jersey from New York City or from other locations, but you need scale, enormous amount of federal support, resources that go beyond anything that we can afford.
Murphy has been a vocal supporter of immigrant causes over the past years. As a candidate in 2017, he insisted on making New Jersey a sanctuary state. Local officials in Atlantic County are also opposed to the Biden plan. In a joint statement, a group of Republican lawmakers from New Jersey's 13th district condemned the proposal. Republican Atlantic County Executive Dennis Levinson said that he will do his best to prevent illegal immigrants from being sent to the region. Los Angeles is also experiencing an influx of illegal immigrants. The 12th bus of migrants arrived in the city from Texas on Monday. The city council voted in June to make LA a sanctuary city. Texas Governor Greg Abbott said this is a reason why he's sending illegal immigrants there. But despite the sanctuary status, the LA City Council voted last week to sue Texas and launch a criminal probe over the immigrant buses.
An undercover video, allegations of late-term abortions. Some critics call the conviction of 5 pro-life activists and the 11 years in prison they face as a weaponizing of the Department of Justice. NTD's Daniel Monahan spoke with a pair of attorneys about the case.
The protesters were members of a group called Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising. They were found guilty of violating the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, or the FACE Act, during their protest in 2020. Attorney Erin Mercino criticized the decision to tack on the federal conspiracy charge, which adds 10 additional years of imprisonment.
When you're a prosecutor, you have a certain amount of power, and it's important to exercise that power with the appropriate level of discretion for what the actual crime is. And here it wasn't truly violent. They did not want to hurt anyone in this process. They, in their minds, they're saving babies, and this was an especially egregious abortion clinic.
The abortion clinic is called Surgery Clinic in Washington, D.C. On its website, it advertises abortions for women up to 27 weeks of pregnancy. The Washington Post reported that a doctor at the clinic, Dr. Santangelo, was the subject of an undercover video in 2013 about what the clinic would do if an abortion resulted in a live birth.
Obviously, you're here for a certain procedure, and if your pregnancy were, let's say you went into labor, the membrane's ruptured, and you delivered before we got to the termination part of the procedure here, then we would do things, we would not help it.
According to Santangelo, he just wanted to reassure the woman. He told the Washington Post that if such an incident occurred for real, he would call 911. Activist Lauren Handy testified that she believed the clinic was conducting full-term abortions and that the protest was inspired by the undercover video. Mercino acknowledges that if the defendants blocked access to the abortion clinic, that would technically be a violation of the FACE statute.
But in terms of violent behavior, they did not go there to hurt anyone. They went there with the intention, due to their deeply held beliefs, that they would be saving individuals in utero from being killed in abortion.
Mercino finds fault with the fact that 4 jurors revealed that they actively support abortion during jury selection, but were still allowed to be on the jury.
I think a person who engages in civil disobedience, they might expect, here a trespass penalty, something like that, but I don't think that any of them expected to be facing 11 years in federal prison. I don't think that they expected to have a trial with 4 people who adamantly opposed what they were protesting, what they were there to defend, and just to have individuals who are biased against you on the jury from the get-go.
The constitutional attorney worries about the precedent the case sets for charging pro-lifers with the federal conspiracy charges carrying 10 years. California Attorney Susan Swift feels there's an unequal application of justice at play.
The DOJ decided to charge these 5 not with a misdemeanor trespass, which is what a lot of activists, especially, the people who are, protesting anything and environmental, harm for climate, culture, or everything like that, that'll be a misdemeanor. But these 5, they singled out and they prosecuted them as felons.
The attorney says the DOJ had about 26 cases against pro-life groups under the FACE Act in 2022.
And yet, isn't it interesting that in 2022, there were 85 cases of violence, firebombing, graffiti on pro-life clinics by such groups as Jane's Revenge, Ruth Sent Us. We're seeing a selective prosecution by a DOJ, perhaps with an agenda, that is weaponizing laws against pro-life activists.
All 5 activists are currently in custody and have been ordered to remain in jail until their sentencing takes place in federal court. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
NTD reached out to the Department of Justice regarding allegations of selective prosecution and weaponizing laws against pro-life activists. We're still waiting to hear back. And coming up, the U.S. says North Korean leader Kim Jong-un expects to meet with President Putin to advance arms negotiations.
And will the Ukraine grain deal be restored? International players weigh in on what needs to happen. We'll have that story and more for you after the break.
1 in 5 children worldwide are faced with the reality of living without food. No family dinners, no special treats, no full bellies. All around the world, parents are struggling to feed their children. Toddlers are suffering from acute malnutrition, which stunts their growth. Kids are forced to drop out of school so they can help support their families. COVID, conflict, inflation, and climate have ignited the worst famine in our lifetime. And we're fed up. Fed up with the fact that hunger robs children of their childhood. Fed up with the lack of progress. Fed up with the injustice. Help us brighten the lives of children all over the world by visiting getfedupnow.org. For as little as $10 a month, you can join Save the Children as we support children and families in desperate need of our help. Now is the time to get fed up and give back. When you join the cause, your $10 monthly donation can help communities in need of life-saving treatments and nutrients. Prevent children from dropping out of school. Support our work with communities and governments to help children go from short-term surviving to long-term thriving. And now, thanks to special government grants, every dollar you give before December 31st can multiply up to 10 times the impact. That means more food, water, medicine, and help for kids around the world. You'll also receive a free tote bag to share your support for children in need. Childhood without food is unimaginable. Get fed up. Call us now or visit getfedupnow.org today.
It's good to have you back with us. Chinese leader Xi Jinping is apparently skipping this week's G20 summit in India. NTD's Daniel Monahan has analysis from a Georgetown professor on the meeting.
China's foreign ministry on Monday announced that Premier Li Qiang will be in attendance and says the country has always attached great importance to the summit. Professor of Asian Studies at Georgetown University Dennis Wilder commented on Xi Jinping's absence.
The Chinese haven't given reason for this, which is a little bit odd. It certainly casts a pall over the summit.
One reason, according to Wilder, is that Jinping wasn't ready for a meeting with Biden yet. He thinks the Chinese prefer a meeting with the U.S. president at the APEC summit in San Francisco. Another reason the professor cites is the recent Indian-Chinese tensions.
The Indians, in the run-up to the G20, held one of the preparatory meetings in Arunachal Pradesh, which angered the Chinese because that is disputed territory. And there have been recent disputes over a new map the Chinese have put out showing some of the disputed territories as Chinese.
Wilder believes India is worried about Chinese military movements into the Indian Ocean and elsewhere. The professor also addressed Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo's remarks that the U.S. is trying to choke off the CCP's military capacity using export control measures.
The future of warfare and the emerging spheres are in artificial intelligence, quantum, these areas where supercomputers are so important. And what the United States is trying to do is make sure China can't build the kinds of supercomputers that would give them an edge.
Wilder touched on China's recent economic woes, saying that the gravy train days of the Chinese economy with 10% growth a year are over.
Economies simply don't operate that way. And after a while, investment in infrastructure, which the Chinese have done a huge amount of, doesn't give you the bang for the buck it used to in terms of GDP growth.
Wilder sees a U.S. advantage in that state of affairs, believing that the Chinese won't hit back on some U.S. sanctions and restrictions because they can't afford to. The professor says that is giving the United States a leg up in the relationship, which makes the Chinese pretty uncomfortable. The two-day summit will begin on September 9th in New Delhi. India's G20 theme comes from a Sanskrit phrase which translates as, "The world is one family." Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
The U.S. says North Korean leader Kim Jong-un expects to meet with President Putin in Russia to advance arms negotiations. NSC spokesperson Adrian Watson did not say when a potential meeting between Kim and Putin might take place, but it would follow a visit to North Korea in July by Russia's defense minister. U.S. officials said last week the two countries are advancing arms negotiations that could see North Korea providing weapons to support Russia's effort in Ukraine. The timing of any meeting is unclear. The New York Times first reported the potential meeting, saying it's expected to take place this month. South Korea's National Intelligence Service said today it's closely monitoring the possibility of Kim's Russia visit.
And sticking with Russia, Russian President Vladimir Putin said yesterday there would be no restoration of the Ukraine grain deal without Russia's demands being met. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on that and Ukraine's reaction.
Putin is calling for the West to meet its obligations to facilitate Russian agricultural exports. The Russian leader remarked that if those commitments were honored, Russia would revive the grain deal immediately. Moscow says restrictions on shipping and insurance have hampered its agricultural trade. Putin made the statements after talks with Turkish President Erdogan, who brokered the original grain deal along with the UN. Erdogan said he thought it would soon be possible to revive the deal, but says Ukraine needs to soften its approach regarding taking mutual steps with Russia. Ukraine's foreign minister reacted to the talks between Russia and Turkey.
If someone meets without Ukraine, it does not mean they are talking without Ukraine. Ukraine is like the shadow of Hamlet's father. We are always present.
The minister also responded to Putin's demands.
Our position is very simple, that the Black Sea Grain Initiative should be restored. Secondly, it should be restored not at the expense of blackmail, fulfilling the demands of the Russian Federation.
Ukraine says that even if Russia were to return to the grain deal, it is not a reason to celebrate yet, complaining that they can still pull the strings and hinder its functioning. The war-torn country is calling for the development of an alternative corridor for grain shipments. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And now to some short headlines from around the world. Authorities in the Indian capital of New Delhi are ramping up security measures ahead of the G20 summit later this week. All online deliveries of food, as well as from sites like Amazon, are being banned for the duration of the summit. Essential services like medicine deliveries will be allowed.
Clashes erupted in an immigrant neighborhood in Sweden's third largest city after an anti-Muslim protester set fire to a copy of the Quran. Police in Malmö said they were pelted with rocks and dozens of cars were set on fire, including in an underground garage. At least 3 people were detained.
Spanish police have made a record cocaine seizure. They found over 10 tons of the drug hidden among boxes of bananas in a shipping container from Ecuador. Police say the stash was the largest ever found in a single container in Spain.
A cross-party delegation of Australian lawmakers will travel to the U.S. this month to urge officials to drop their attempts to extradite WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange from a UK prison. His supporters say he has been victimized because he exposed U.S. wrongdoing. Washington says his release of secret documents put lives in danger.
Well, on the Quran burning, I believe somewhere there's probably the line between, free expression and hatred.
Well, absolutely, yeah. And in Europe, there are blasphemy laws, but sometimes they don't always address destroying religious texts. We're heading into break now. A prisoner at large in Pennsylvania continues to evade capture. Find out what police are doing to step up search efforts.
And we hear from a safety professional on the lingering threats from hurricane damage. Find out how you can protect yourself from mold and other hazards like contaminated stormwater.
Shen Yun Creations, the streaming platform from Shen Yun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore ShenYunCreations.com.
Anyone who's ever sold a home can tell you it is really hard. That's why who you work with matters. Together with Homelight, we've helped thousands of people sell faster and for the best price.
Life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome. Prediabetes does. With early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test today. Go to doihaveprediabetes.org.
My employees and I are excited to announce it's our 20th anniversary, and to celebrate, we're bringing you a limited edition MyPillow. The Giza Elegance MyPillow is made with the most amazing cotton, 2-inch pipe gusset, comes in 4 custom loft levels, and it's machine washable and dryable.
When I got my pillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs and helps keep your neck supported and aligned. That's why we've been around for 20 years, because MyPillow works.
Go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get your limited edition 20th anniversary MyPillow queen size. Retails for $69.98, now only $19.98. That's right, only $19.98.
With my 60-day money-back guarantee, you have nothing to lose.
Sleep well, America!
Good to have you back. Partygoers stranded for days at Burning Man were allowed to make their exodus from the northern Nevada desert yesterday. Event organizers began letting traffic flow out of the main road around 2 p.m. local time, but urged attendees to delay their exit to help ease road congestion. Organizers also asked attendees not to walk out of the Black Rock Desert as others had done throughout the weekend, including celebrity DJ Diplo and comedian Chris Rock. However, they didn't specify why. The festival was closed to vehicles after more than a half-inch of rain fell Friday, causing flooding and foot-deep mud. At least one death was reported at the festival, but organizers said it wasn't weather-related. And a potentially dangerous lockdown situation in a Minnesota prison ended peacefully.
Inmates at Stillwater State Prison were protesting conditions during a record-setting heat wave in the area.
100 inmates returned to their cells peacefully after protesting limited access to showers, ice, and clean water on Sunday. In a social media post, a local activist group said conditions were blamed on staffing problems. Stillwater is one of 9 prisons in the state without facility-wide air conditioning.
Kevin Reese, founder of the criminal justice group Until We Are All Free, described Stillwater as a pizza oven during the summers he was incarcerated there. The current heat wave has caused issues in prisons nationwide.
Police in Pennsylvania have intensified their efforts to catch an escaped prisoner convicted of murder for fatally stabbing his ex-girlfriend. Authorities have now enlisted the help of his mother. The escapee's mother recorded a message in Portuguese, his native language, urging him to surrender peacefully. It's being broadcast from police helicopters and vehicles in the area.
Police think Cavalcanti is hiding in a residential neighborhood near the prison. A doorbell camera recorded a picture of him over the weekend. Police at one point spotted him and gave chase, but lost him.
The fugitive is also wanted in Brazil for murder. The prison in Pennsylvania has declined to provide details about the breakout.
With hurricane season upon us, we hear some tips on how to protect yourself after a storm hits. Earlier, I spoke with a safety professional who outlined steps to prevent health hazards stemming from stormwater. Take a look. Joining me now is Mark Herrera, Director of Safety and Security at IAVM. Thank you for your time today, Mark.
It's my pleasure, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
Mold is a very serious problem that forms after hurricanes strike. So how can people protect themselves from that?
Listen, one of the things, Kevin, that we talk about is we always know how to prepare for the most part for a hurricane in preparation of it making landfall. But the one thing that we don't really talk about is after a hurricane makes landfall, what are those hazards? We have to know and understand that the combination of water, the warm temperatures, and obviously the organic material, which is what we're talking about today, that can lead to mold growth and the risk of waterborne diseases. People typically don't know how dangerous that can be. So we talk about what are some of those best practices for the recovery efforts in the aftermath of an actual hurricane that people can adhere to and know that they're still not out of the water yet. It's still a very dangerous environment.
Yes, and you have to wear those N95 masks, right, if you're starting to clean an area with mold?
Absolutely. The first thing is safety is obviously the first thing that we've got to focus on, right? So do we really think about what we do after a hurricane strikes and you have the copious amounts of water? You have to be able to first turn off the electricity in the areas that are wet. That's critical. That is so important. The protective equipment, as you just mentioned, including gloves, goggles, the N95 respirator mask when cleaning up mold and debris, is something that we don't ever take into consideration. But should you? Yes. It's those long-term effects that could ultimately harm you if you don't. You're not going to feel the effects initially. Avoiding that water, the flood water that can be contaminated with sewage or toxins is what we want to focus on. So that is so critical. The idea is to dry out the home. That's the most important thing. So how do you do that? Well, you increase the ventilation. You have to increase ventilation and get the air circulating. Open doors, open your windows. You want to check, use your fans. I mean, everybody's got fans. Everybody's got humidifiers nowadays. Kick those up to speed for the drying process and check concealed areas like crawl spaces and attics for moisture, because that is where your moisture is going to be. The mold cleanup, Kevin, is also another thing. You want to clean those hard surfaces. Use a detergent solution, but don't mix the bleach with other cleaning solutions. Always use a ventilated area using the proper PPE or protective equipment that you can get a hold of.
And what do you do when there is a storm surge? Like you said, this water can be contaminated and you have to get around sometimes.
Oh, 100%, Kevin. The storm surge is critical because, again, there's more hazards than just the mold in itself, right? We're talking about electrical concerns. We're talking about, I've seen things in Florida such as just crocodiles and everything, all of the sea life and the sea animals that are brushed, that are run right into the land. That is critical. If you're not aware of where you're walking or where you're stepping, and even then, if you have 2 feet of water and you've got a flow that's taking place, that's enough to carry off a vehicle. So sometimes we think, oh, we're safe. It's over. It's done with. All I got to do is get to my home. There's a lot of hazards getting to your home, and then once you get to your home, drying it out.
Safety is such a top priority in those situations, and if you have to walk around, try not to wear sandals, just wear those closed shoes so that you don't get an open wound and that bacteria doesn't get in there. Mark Herrera, Director of Safety and Security at IAVM, I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, Kevin. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, and one thing that I'll add here too is that hurricanes can cause pathogens to get into the drinking water, so you got to make sure that you boil it before you drink it or cook with it.
Yeah, really good points. Stay safe, everybody. I think you made some really good points, so thank you.
Yes, important topic.
Going to Tennessee, residents witnessed a scary moment provided by Mother Nature, and it was all captured on video. The rock slide came after days of heavy rainfall in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. A group of friends met at the parking lot for a dinner outing when they saw the start of the rock slide. Rocks then came crashing down onto the parking, making a thunderous noise. After the dust settled, no one was hurt. Luckily, no one was hurt.
Yes.
That looks intense.
Yeah, and they designed those slopes to have those barriers there, but it looks like they were just coming right through.
Exactly.
Yeah, they need to give a certain buffer if they know that there's a risk. Yeah. And up next, Congress returns to strike a pending deal, to strike a spending deal and avert a government shutdown. But is it too late? And what's the economic impact? NTD Business host Don Ma breaks it down for us.
And a $1.3 million to retire? That's what many Americans estimate they'll need. Does it apply to you? We hear from an expert after the break.
My dad's name was David. He always talked about getting life insurance, and now it's too late.
No one was expecting my husband Dave to suffer from a heart attack. We didn't have life insurance. We thought we had more time.
Don't be Dave. And don't wait until it's too late to get the life insurance coverage you need. And if you don't have enough insurance to cover funeral costs, credit card debt, and other expenses, your family is going to get stuck with the bill. Call now to get affordable life insurance.
Just call 800-494-1562.
If you're over 50, you can't be turned down for this insurance, regardless of your health. Plus, there's no medical exam, no health questions. Your rate will never go up. Your coverage will never go down. And rates start as low as $5 a week. Remember, don't be Dave. Call now.
Call now.
800-494-1562.
Life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome. Prediabetes does. 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, but with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. And you can change the outcome. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test today. Go to doihaveprediabetes.org.
Welcome back. The Senate returns today, and the pressure is on lawmakers to agree on fiscal spending levels to avoid a government shutdown. With less than 4 weeks, is it too late to avoid a shutdown? Here to discuss this is NTD Business host Don Ma. Don, good morning. It's great to have you on.
Yeah, Kevin, good morning.
So if we do see a shutdown, what's going to be the impact on Americans?
Right, very great question, Kevin. But let me just give some very brief context first to why we're even facing the threat of a shutdown. So the federal government operates on an annual budget, and it expires on September 30th of each year, and Congress must adopt a new budget for the next year. So when it fails to do that, federal agencies must cease all non-essential functions, and that's known as a government shutdown. And this one could be as early as October. So then what will be the impacts on everyday people, right? Now, if you're going to be dealing with the government, for example, if you need your passport renewed, if you're applying for citizenship, if you have questions with your IRS refund or about your taxes, you might see some difficulty there because the people that are in charge of dealing with those things won't be on the job. And here's a very important tip. If you plan on dealing with the government or are currently dealing with the government, you might want to speed up that process.
Yeah, it's very important to avoid that, and of course we might expect some concessions to be in store there and try to get this through. So what's going to be the economic impact of a shutdown?
Well, Kevin, the good news here is that it would be not very damaging to the U.S. economy at large. Because the threat of a shutdown is at a far lower level compared to the threat of a U.S. debt default. So during a government shutdown, essential services generally are continued. Military will be standing by. Post office will deliver mail. Social security checks will be deposited at the banks, and the Treasury can continue to pay interest on the national debt on time. So actually, a government shutdown would be manageable for the economy, Kevin.
So not as big as a debt default, but still something serious. So do you have anything else for us, Don?
Yeah, sure. Just a couple quick updates. In terms of e-commerce, a new study compares online discount prescription programs to traditional insurance plans. They looked at 20 common generic drugs like statins and antidepressants. They concluded 1 in 5 consumers could save money using programs like Amazon Pharmacy or GoodRx discount cards. But other than that, Labor Day weekend capped off a record-breaking summer, it seems like. The TSA says more than 220 million travelers were screened at airports since Memorial Day, though flight delays were also up. Now, according to AAA, Americans booked 4% more domestic trips compared to last year, plus 44% more international. But other than that, Kevin, that's all from me.
220 million air travelers. Well, that's great that we're starting to emerge from this pandemic. Don Ma, host of NTD Business, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Kevin.
Research by Northwest Mutual found that Americans want nearly $1.3 million to retire. Is that really how much is needed nowadays? I spoke to an expert to find out what he thinks. Joining me now is Bill Dendy. He is a registered principal at Raymond James Financial Services and president at Alicorn Investment Management. Good morning, Bill. Now, I want to start with this, with a study that found that Americans think they need almost $1.3 million to retire comfortably. Now, I just want to get your reaction to that number.
Well, the reaction is it depends. I mean, 1.3 million sounds like a really big number. But I think for a lot of people, they pull that number out of the sky without really reflecting on how much income will that generate and how much do they have in other resources. Social Security benefits can vary extraordinarily from maximum benefit of $43,000 a year this year. So if you have two people pulling out maximum benefits, that's $86,000 versus the average benefit is only $18,000 a year. And so if you have a person pulling out that plus a spousal benefit of half that, you're only doing $27,000. Well, $27,000, $86,000, how much more money do I need? It depends. And then what is your lifestyle? So while that number of over $1.2 million that people think they need at retirement, for some people, that may not be enough. For others, they may be fine on a fraction of that.
Now, is there a formula maybe on how somebody can actually calculate their personal need and their personal amount of savings needed for retirement?
So the first thing a person needs to know is what is their retirement going to be for them. And know it varies quite a bit from person to person. Know what your retirement is going to cost. From that, knowing what your retirement is going to cost, number two is determine what resources do you have to fund that retirement. Most of us are going to count on Social Security, but there are a lot of school teachers out there that may not be eligible for Social Security because they have a teacher retirement system that will pay very well, but it does eliminate some of their spousal benefits or widow's benefits or other Social Security benefits. So know the resources that you have to work with and any limitations on those resources. From that, you determine what you have to be able to provide on your own. And a general withdrawal rate that people count on is 5 to 7%, depending upon if you're going to try to leave the principal behind or if you're going to try to time it to where the principal's gone at death and you spend your last dollar on the way out. But 5 to 7%. So you then reverse into it. So if you needed $50,000 more a year after all of your benefits, then $1 million generating 5% would make it that $50,000 per year. But don't forget about inflation. Whatever it costs year one, it's probably going to cost more 5, 10, 20 years into it. So then build that in as well.
That's right. Inflation is a big issue. So once you roughly know how much money you need, where do you go from there? Where would you recommend somebody would put their money, invest, or is it a 401k, or how do you recommend people invest their money?
Well, a lot of people are investing in retirement plans, which are specifically designed to maximize the number of dollars that you're going to have for retirement. And they do that because these 401k plans will take money out of your paycheck before you even receive it. So it's a lot easier to save if you never get those dollars in your own checking account. If it just automatically goes in there, one day you open your eyes and you're like, wow, this has grown up to be a sizable amount of money. But it is up to the investor to know how to invest those dollars while they're working to grow, and then how to turn those dollars into income when they retire. And there are different investments that they may employ for the growth phase and other investments they employ for the distribution or the income phase. And I know it may be complex. You can learn this stuff, but there are professionals out there to visit with. And this is the perfect time to talk to the certified financial planner.
Thank you, Bill Dendy. I really appreciate your advice today.
God bless you. It's a real pleasure.
It's really always good to think ahead, and if you're going to retire, you might want to consider relocating to make your money go a little bit further. Like, for example, Florida has no state income tax, so that IRA or that 401k or even Social Security retirement benefits can go further.
Good point. And what might be interesting to explore too is maybe to retire abroad, especially if you have family abroad, you know, in a country that maybe where your money goes a little longer way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really expanding our range of thought here.
Yeah, exactly. All right, heading into break.
So New York City came alive with the unmistakable rhythm of the Caribbean at the West Indian Day Parade. NTD was on the scene.
And a record-breaking gator in an escaped tortoise and a fish getting CT scanned. All coming up in our fun news headlines.
Hey Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm
sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps? I couldn't tell you.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
It's great to have you back. New York City came alive with the unmistakable rhythm of the Caribbean. The New York Caribbean Festival, also known as the West Indian Day Parade, celebrated its 51st year on Labor Day. Let's take a look.
It's not only America's biggest Caribbean carnival, but one of the biggest Caribbean carnivals in the world. Getting the pre-parade energy of her troops ready is group director Dania Phoenix. The group plays the music of multiple countries.
We're representing a mix of people from all over the world. Yes, particularly, here in the U.S., we have a mixture of cultures. New York is one of the most diverse places in the world. We represent the positive results of people maintaining their culture and sharing that culture and having solidarity all around the world.
They weren't the only troops feeling the energy before the parade. The NYPD were flying the flags of their heritage. Working to keep everyone safe has become extremely important for Mayor Adams and NYPD after some violent episodes in past events. Last year was the most crime-free year of the parade, and the NYPD plans to keep it that way this year. I ran into Kay Mason, the Grand Marshal of the parade this year, dressed for parade success, and has been attending for over 30 years.
Since 1989 I started up to this present time. I play Queen and I had won 10 times streets.
The NYC West Indian Day Parade, a celebration of culture, unity, and tradition, bringing the city together for some safe fun in the sun. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
That's awesome. They really put the cultural diversity of New York all on display there.
Yeah, they do, with those costumes, and that's some rhythm.
It is.
All right. To end the show, we have some interesting headlines for you.
That's right. An alligator over 14 feet long and weighing more than 800 pounds. That's what a group of Mississippi hunters captured during their latest outing. The Mississippi Department of Wildlife says it breaks the record for the longest alligator ever captured in the state. An alligator's average length is around 8 feet long.
And a Louisiana family was reunited with their 100-year-old tortoise, Biscuit. The slowpoke escaped during a storm when a gate blew open at the family's home. Local animal control rescued him from a nearby canal. Look at him go. After Biscuit was taken to a local animal shelter, the family came and happily took him home.
Think you've seen it all? How about an angelfish getting a CT scan? Denver zookeepers noticed one of their angelfish was swimming abnormally and decided to take action. The fish was sedated and had water poured over its gills during the scan process. The zoo says the fish was put on a treatment plan and is now happily swimming around its home.
That is indeed something new for me, that angelfish.
Yeah, it is CT scan, and I love how they just refer to Biscuit as a slowpoke.
Right, just waddling around like that.
Yeah. All right, great way to end the show as usual. That's it for today's program. We're wrapping up here. Write us if you have any feedback at goodmorning@ntd.com. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Did you know YouTube only keeps selective videos on its platform? So if you want to make sure you get the full picture, just subscribe to our newsletter. Go to newsletter.ntd.com and sign up. It's free.